Hello and welcome to everyone on the line. We're so glad you could join us for today's webinar, Digital Material Attributes, Helping Designers and Sourcing Teams Find the Right Materials. This event was organized by the United States Fashion Industry Association, representing brands, retailers, importers, and wholesalers based in the U.S. and doing business globally, as well as USFIA's 2020 Innovation Partner, Material Exchange. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our presenters today. With us, we have Darren Glenister, CEO of Material Exchange, and Dayan Svekic, CPO of Material Exchange. My name is Shannon Brady, Communications Coordinator at USFIA, and I will be your moderator. Please note that questions can be submitted at any time during the live program. Simply click on the question header on your webinar control panel, type your text into the box, and hit send. Our presenters will address as many questions as possible at the end of the program. If for some reason we experience a technical difficulty and lose audio, please refer to the chat box for further instructions. As a reminder, all registered participants will receive an email later today with the slide deck and a copy and a recording of today's session. So without further delay, I will hand the floor over to Darren.
Hi everyone. So my name is Darren Glenister. I am CEO of Material Exchange, and I'm very happy to be here my evening, probably your morning or early lunchtime, to present Material Exchange in the context of digital material attributes, which are very, very important to us. So a little introduction about myself. I have 10 plus, actually this is 20 there, well I'm much older than I thought I am, experience of working in technology, and I focused a lot on fashion technology, developing solutions to make fashion more easy for those involved. And I joined Material Exchange in February of last year, and before that I was working at PTC, one of the largest PLM companies, as VP of Innovation. So I have a lot of experience of fashion and pain points, and very happy to be here to present what we're doing in terms of material attributes. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So as a quick agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about Material Exchange, which I'm going to cover. And then I'm going to talk about our involvement with the GS1, and then hand over to Dayan, who will talk a little bit more about the attributes that we've defined with the GS1. And then we're not going to do the demo in the third part. We're going to save it to the end just in case we have some technical difficulties, but I'll just show you a couple of screenshots from Material Exchange and then open up some questions. And then if everything works out well, then Dayan will be able to give you a live demo of Material Exchange in action. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So Material Exchange is, in essence, it's a B2B platform that connects brands with material suppliers, and it digitizes the process of sourcing materials. We've been developing Material Exchange for close to 2 years, and we have a very close relationship with an organization called the FDRA, who have been helping us on the footwear side. Material Exchange started in the beginning focusing quite a lot on footwear, but has been gradually growing more into apparel. And at the center of our platform are materials. And obviously we don't have physical materials in Material Exchange. We have digital representations of those materials. And what's important is that we have actual material attributes that help sourcing teams and designers find materials by searching for them or looking for them visually. And we've worked very closely with the GS1 to define those materials in Material Exchange. And as we go through the presentation, you'll see that we have properly defined materials in digital form, and that means actually defining attributes that are very important to people in sourcing and design. Of course, we also have visual representations of materials. We have scans of materials, and we actually have material data that can be moved from our system to other systems. So if you could just move on to the next slide, please. And Material Exchange has not been developed in a vacuum. As I mentioned, I came from PTC, who are one of the largest PLM companies in the world and have a system called Flex PLM. We had a lot of input on the PLM side from PTC, and also we've worked very closely with the FDRA, and most recently have become technology partner of the USFIA. We also have partners in terms of sustainability. We have a very important partner in the GS1. And for those of you who don't know, the GS1 is the global standards organization behind the barcode and the RFID tag. And we've worked very closely with defining digital materials with the GS1. We also work with numerous material shows and technology partners like Adobe. Material Exchange in itself, it's a very ambitious project, and it's something that we have full support from the industry. And it's been very important for us to work with partners like the ones you can see here. But of course, we have many other partners that we work with as well. If you could go to the next slide, please. So as a company, we've grown quite a lot. We're now 6 offices. We have offices in Europe, in Asia. So we have a team based out in China. We have a team in the US, and we now work with over 50 brands. And we have to say that during this COVID-19 situation, because a lot of brands have not been able to actually work directly with their suppliers, we've seen a real big influx of brands approaching us to work with digitizing their supply chains. So that 50 plus actually is growing very quickly. And in terms of suppliers, we actually now have over 200 of the biggest suppliers in the world in Material Exchange. And then we have a lot of materials, and that number as well has grown. So it says here 4,500, but we're over 6,000 now. And we have a very active community of different partners who work with us. So we have a community membership of over 1,000. So our team is growing and our reach is growing. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the problem that we're solving at the core of Material Exchange is actually this very complicated supply chain. So if you look at, typically you'll have a brand, and then you'll have material suppliers, and then you'll have a lot of in-between people. So you could have material shows, there could be marketplaces, there could be sourcing or sales agents, and then also there can be factories or manufacturers in between. And we know that this is quite typical for many brands, and this process has always been complicated. But now with the current situation with COVID-19, it's even more complicated, because a lot of these face-to-face meetings that used to take place can no longer happen. So we know that material shows have been cancelled this year. We know that agents are not able to freely move to China and other places and meet with brands. So digitalization is more important now than it ever was. And we have seen that this process of a supply chain is ready now to be digitized, and the market is embracing it. If you could go to the next slide, please. The other area that we focus on Material Exchange, and this is very important to us, it's a very important cause, is around transparency. So we have in our system suppliers, but we allow suppliers to be very transparent in what they're doing. And transparency comes from having materials available, but also having the accreditations available from that particular supplier. And we've seen a big drive in interest in transparency from brands. We've probably all heard about the G7 Pact that came out of Paris, the United Nations Sustainable Goals. And even here you can see that Amazon are pushing for transparency on their retail fashion side. We also know that technology is playing more an important part in fashion. We saw recently that H&M announced their own B2B platform, which is called Treadler, for allowing other brands, small brands, to come into their supply chain. So digitalization, sustainability, transparency, and of course the COVID-19 situation has really been open for discussion this year. And we've seen that brands are really trying to become more responsible with what they're doing. And also now, because of the COVID-19 situation, are really trying to keep their supply chains together. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So this gives us 3 areas of focus in Material Exchange. The first is around sustainability and transparency. I mentioned that we have a very rich set of material attributes, and Deanne will cover those in a few slides. But we also have the ability to upload testing reports and certificates for sustainability. That gives a brand full line of transparency into the suppliers and actually what they're offering. But also it allows a brand to share initiatives through the supply chain. And we know that it's not always easy to tell your suppliers what you want to do in terms of sustainability. And we make that easier through material exchange. And as I mentioned, obviously the COVID-19 situation is really being disruptive to supply chains. And we already saw that brands were looking to rebuild their supply chains, in some cases move from one country to another, consolidate and have less suppliers. So we've also focused heavily on making that a reality. And then the last piece is around digitalization. And we've seen that brands are starting to move from 2D design to 3D. And that process takes a bit of time because it's a completely new skill set. It requires a new way of dealing with materials. But we are deeply involved in that process and helping brands understand about digitalization. And the benefits are obvious. In terms of digital, you can reduce sampling, you can reduce speed to market, and you can actually have large groups of designers and sourcing people working together across different geolocations. If you can move to the next slide, please. So material exchange, I'm going to keep mentioning this because it's really important to us, has data at its core. And we've worked on those material attributes that I've mentioned several times. And we have a very robust set of data in material exchange that allows us to move that data from our system to other PLM systems. It's not just limited to one PLM, it can be any PLM system, but also into a PDM system or another system you want that data to appear. We also have tools around collaboration. We make it easy for the brand to actually communicate with its supply chain, and we give that transparency that brands are looking for now. So if a brand is following a particular initiative, for example, Better Cotton Initiative, or they're looking to have sustainable leather, we have the tools to actually help the brand work with its supply chain and become more transparent. If you can move to the next slide, please. This is us. As I mentioned, we're a global team. You get to see there's our China office and our European and US offices. And we have customers all over the world. If you go to the next slide, please. And now we're going to cover the GS1 materials. I will now hand it over to Deanne to go through this part.
Thank you, Darren. So Shannon, can we go to the next slide, please? So first, just a brief introduction. My name is Dejan Zvekic, and I'm Chief Product Officer, CPO at the Material Exchange, sharing the last half of the decade's career with Darren, because we were moving throughout different stages in the company, and also spent quite some time doing with the PTC and that PLM solutions and integrations for the design and sourcing team. So basically, what is the very important thing is that our whole industry is kind of at the tail, or even a long tail, of the digitalization overall in comparing to other industries. In I don't know, civil construction or electronics or any other engineering industries, you already have for more than a decade standards for describing and putting all the properties inside of the attributes of the material. So if you say that there is a brick, and you describe that brick in a proper way with a proper set of attributes, it's always considered as the same thing. But in a way, in a fashion apparel footwear industry, it's not like that. So the initiative, which was started with the GS1 as one of the main global standards provider, was around actually taking initial steps for putting some order into this organized chaos what we have. So we worked with them, and we worked with them from the initial phase, and there is a team of brands and industry experts that were working on these best practice guidelines for the exchange raw material attributes. And this publication was published just at the end of last year, and the first update was published a couple of days ago. And it contains the set of attributes and the values which actually allows you to describe the different material types. These helping to the brands and vendors to have a better understanding about the material properties, and it helps throughout our ecosystem, as a first digital ecosystem that is adapting these GS1 standards, to easy up the communication and sourcing, which I'm gonna demo at the end of this presentation. Shannon, can we go to the next slide, please? So we divided these attributes, and first of all, every material type needs to be defined separately, because you cannot have a set of attributes for the different kind of fabrics or different kind of materials. We started with leather, synthetics, knit and woven, textile knit and woven, and these are the first 4 material types defined with the GS1 document. Recently, we added on a material exchange insole, and it goes now throughout the work group in GS1, like publishing as a GS1 standard, and also hardware. And the fresh update is from actually yesterday, when we entered the outsole on, actually, we introduced outsole on a material exchange as a new material type. Can we go to the next slide, please? So each material type has a set of 18, I believe, general attributes, which are commonly used for those headers and cardboards which are presented in the material sample books or hangers. Usually this is more or less all of what you can get from the sample books when the suppliers are sending to you. So we acquire these standards, from the usual practice. But for each of the material type, we add more typical we added more typical attributes and properties which are used. You're going to see that example on the next slide. So these are examples for these 6 types what we have. So you see that some of them has a specific types, and each of them has a set of values. And like just last week, we had a couple of new choices, for example, for the content or for grainage status in textile knit, or for filament count in textile woven, and we do have even a template which is aligned with the GS1, where we allow the brands and suppliers to enhance the set of attributes that we are using. It is ongoing process. We are going to add new material types almost every 2 to 3 weeks, and we're going to update our material type definition also with suggestions and proposals going with the industry. And I frankly suggest you, to join this initiative, because it's going to help all in the industry. So we can go to the next slide and pass over back to Darren. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. If you could just, we're going to save the demo just until the end. There's a couple of screenshots here from Material Exchange, but I won't dwell on these because Deanne can actually show it for real. This is actually the profile for one of our suppliers, but Deanne can show you. Please go to the next slide. And next one, please. Material Exchange also has integrations into various applications. Primarily, we focused on 3D. So here's an example of integration where materials can be passed directly from our library into one of those applications. And we have integrations into Clo and Browseware and other 3D applications. If you go to the next slide, please. So we have at the core of Material Exchange, we are helping brands to stay connected to their supply chain. We're helping them work with materials, and we're helping them to connect and collaborate with other team members. We are an end-to-end solution for finding materials. Our goal is to be the world's library of materials, so that you can go into Material Exchange and find any material from any geographic location at a reasonable price point. We do not fulfill transactions in Material Exchange. We are purely the digital catalog, and we are the place where material data can be stored and downloaded and moved to other places. We help brands actually rely less on face-to-face meetings. And of course, with the current situation, that's very important. And we want to increase the digital collaboration inside of Material Exchange. For us, this has been 2 years of understanding the market and working very closely with organizations like the FDRA and now the USFIA. We are evolving our product to meet the market's demands, but we're not building a product for a single brand, and we're not building it for a single supplier. We're building it for an industry, which is obviously a very brave thing to do, but it's something that we take very seriously. If you could just move to the next slide, please. We have 3 pillars of success in our platform. We help reduce costs by making it easier to source materials. We have it so that you can compare materials by pricing. You can also look at a lot of different vendors. You can reduce the need to produce physical samples because you have digital materials available. And of course, you reduce the need to actually meet with suppliers face to face. And we really want to help reduce wastage. We know that suppliers produce a lot of material books, and they actually produce them kind of speculatively with the hope that a brand is going to be interested in those materials. We're doing a lot of work behind the scenes in collecting data, and actually our medium-term goal is to help suppliers produce better choices when they actually make materials. And then that will in turn reduce wastage. And of course, most materials that end up in a material library only have a 2-year lifespan. We're not replacing those materials, but we want to reduce the amount of physical materials that actually are sent to brands by having them digitally available. And of course, that helps with sustainability, and it reduces the number of samples. We have clear information about material testing and certifications. You maybe don't know, but there's approximately 600 different sustainability initiatives worldwide, and it's very difficult for suppliers to know what to follow. But we actually work very closely with our brands to make sure that we can help the suppliers follow the right initiatives. And of course, we make it easier to find sustainable materials. That is something that's becoming of more interest to brands, and also to find materials that are more innovative. And we're working on a few pilot projects where we are collecting at source chemical testing information, and actually also passing information up to the consumer level to tell if a material is actually sustainable or has a low impact on the environment. And because we're digital, we make it easy for materials to be uploaded. If you think about the typical process of a supplier creating material samples or books, they have to create those, send them to the right person, hope that person actually looks at them inside of a material library. But we have all of the materials available in a digital form, and you can order individual samples of materials as well. And we have the ability to move data around. We know that some of you probably use a PLM system. We have the ability to send material data from the supplier to Material Exchange and into PLM, which means that you're reducing the amount of keystroking and data entry on the PLM side. And of course, we're here to make things more efficient. And because we have such a big brand group, we get a lot of information from brands. We get a lot of information from suppliers and industry thought leaders, and we're constantly adding new areas to our platform to increase speed. If you could just go to the next slide, please. So we see material exchange as part of a broader ecosystem. So I mentioned we have brands, we have suppliers. We also have the material attributes, and we have the certificates. But at the core, we have material exchange, which is the digital library. And that makes it very easy for the brand to search materials, find vendors, and then of course, download materials. We see this ecosystem growing over time. We see that we'll add more components. We're actually even working on a concept for a digital certificate that would allow you to understand if your vendors are keeping up with the right protocols for certificates, in particular around sustainability. If you could just go to the next slide. We've done some research in terms of gains, and we look at, on average, just under 300 hours saved per season. We make it far easier to search materials. Obviously, you can validate credentials in material exchange. We know that it's often a problem with a certificate for a vendor to know where it is. But with material exchange, you have it in one place. And it saves a lot of time with choosing which suppliers you are going to continue working with if you're looking to consolidate or reduce your suppliers. It reduces the time you have to spend at trade shows. And as I mentioned, it helps with data being moved from one system to another. So we see considerable time saved, and we think that these efficiencies will continue to grow, and more hours will be saved as we add more features into the platform. If you could just go to the next slide, please. So just before I hand over to Deanne, who's actually going to do a demo, I thought we could just do a quick Q&A now whilst Deanne's teeing up the demo. And then we can save a bit of time at the end for some questions as well.
Great, thank you, Darren and Dion. As Darren mentioned, we're going to do a quick Q&A session now. We are going to start with the questions submitted during the live presentation, but we do encourage everyone on the line to continue submitting questions using your dashboard. The first question is, how has Material Exchange and GS1 partnered with the 3DRC to establish these material standards for the industry?
Deanne, I think this is one for you.
So the GS1 standard is actually standards that is in development, and it needs to fit for various reasons into this industry. You know, so the 3D aspect is one of them, and we are working closely with 3D CAD providers and the tooling providers for the 3D visualization, design, and sourcing, you know, in order to help them having a better understanding. There is frankly speaking, a kind of battle between the standards currently in the 3D. So there are a lot of file formats, there are a lot of scanning formats, there are a lot of ways how the materials could be represented in the 3D way. We are trying to be in this battle, like supportive and in a way agnostic, you know, because we are supporting most of the 3D file formats because we are using Material Exchange as a catalog and container that you can upload any of the 3D contents. The same approach is currently taken with the GS1, you know, because we do not want to favorize any of the 3D solutions for the future. In a nutshell, you know, the standardization is ongoing, and it will need to affect also the 3D standards and the 3D representations of the materials.
Great, thank you. And as a follow-up to that question, have you partnered with brands to determine what we need?
Yes, I will start with this, and probably Darren will add on the top. Have we partnered with the brands to do that? Yeah, we are partnering with the brands there are in the steering committee and in this group, which is defining the GS1 standard, there are quite a few footwear brands and apparel brands that are helping us, even with the new material types that are still not defined. And the challenge with this is that footwear and apparel are actually overlapping in so many material types. So even hardware, which somebody considered primarily like a footwear kind of type of the material, is actually being brought as a question: can we add it also from apparel brands, because they are also using hooks or buckles, for their product development. So in that way, we are really partnering with a lot of brands who are, driving this standards development thing. I don't know. Darren wants to add something?
No, I think what's important is that as we add more brands to our ecosystem, we get different perspectives, and we are obviously open to different perspectives. But the material types that were defined by the GS1, they had hundreds of hours of input from us and brands and suppliers as well. But we will continue to take input from all new brands who join our platform, and that's one of the big benefits of joining us. You get to be part of a very active development ecosystem.
Yeah, we spend a lot of times, like Darren said, going through the different catalogs of material suppliers and trying to figure it out what attributes they are using to describe the properties of the material. So we are continue doing that with the help of the brands and the suppliers.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, if a brand has a proprietary material, how is this handled by the Material Exchange?
You mean, I suppose it is more like if you have a proprietary attribute for the material. First of all, this as a exchange platform, it needs to have approach one definition fits to all. In the same way, like GS1 is trying to, define the standards which is going to fit for the whole industry, not just for the proprietary standards of the brands. But however, working with the PLM systems, I know that most of the PLM allow users to create their own definition of the material types. For the purpose of mapping the material exchange, a material type, to the proprietary standards, we do have a couple of solutions which are using a very effective middle layer called TRC, by the way, Inverse Retail Connector, which can do the mapping from the material exchange data model to the target data model inside of somebody else PLM or PDM or any system they're using for handling their materials and sourcing. So it is a one standard fits to all, but it is adaptable in order if you want to reduce the keystroking and import the material library into your own system.
And just to add, because the question actually could be interpreted another way, if it was about having exclusive materials to the brand, then we do have the capability of the supplier who you're working with to define the material as exclusive, and then obviously it would only be seen by that brand and no one else. But you're going to go through that anyway, Deanne, in the demo.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Next question is, how do you verify the sustainability information on materials on your platform?
So we actually don't verify them. We have the ability for the certificates to be uploaded and the date to be followed when it's going to expire. We typically have brands do their own auditing anyway of the suppliers they actually work with. But we are, as I said, working on a digital certificate that would actually be able to verify. So, for example, if the BCI or there was a leather working group were to issue a certificate, then we could actually validate that in real time to say that it's valid. We think that will be a really good add in particular as sustainability becomes more important in sourcing. And we are also looking at ways of reducing the auditing as well, that we know that a lot of brands share the same suppliers, so that when these suppliers are audited, we're trying to actually centralize that so that we don't have to do repeat audits if it's the one brand using one supplier and then another brand using the same supplier for the same materials.
Great. The next question is, how many suppliers are currently operating under your platform? Is there a requirement suppliers must meet in terms of size to be part of the platform?
By the nature of what we're doing, we have mostly very big suppliers. We have over 200 at the moment. We haven't just opened the gate and let every supplier in. We actually onboard each supplier one by one. So we have a team in China where most of the suppliers are. We do have suppliers in other countries, but most of them are in China, who work with the suppliers to make sure that they set up their profile properly, also that they have their certificates uploaded and that they have a good material scanned. And we also offer scanning services as well if they wish to use a third-party service. Over time, we will automate the system more and actually have some checks in place that we'll be able to take a higher volume of suppliers. We do have a lot of suppliers that are given to us by brands, but when we talk to brands, we say realistically which are the top percentage of the suppliers that you work with, and then they give us a more focused list and we onboard those first. But over time, obviously, we'll add more suppliers and we'll add more automation. But there's no size. I mean, some of the suppliers we have one material, and then we have suppliers who have hundreds of materials.
Great, thank you. The next question is, when materials are pulled into other systems like PLM systems, is there a certain file format that is considered to be the standard?
This question could be divided in two sections. One is metadata, actually the definition and attribute set. So we are supporting any kind of format for exporting the materials. We can export that in JSON, in HTML, in CSV, or whatever is supported over there. But the second part is probably regarding the media type, or actually the images or the 3D files. So what we are doing, we are presenting what the supplier is uploading on the system, primarily PNG and JPEG images. And also we are supporting, like I said, all kind of 3D materials. By the way, I realized that the question was a little bit different at the beginning, but I will handle it later on. So yes, we are supporting any kind of file formats, but the question is what the PLMs or other system are supporting for the input on their system. So we can define in that middle layer a different kind of scenarios, you know, how the file format and the data model should be validated and transferred. It is a short process. It's not automatic, but once done, you know, after that, the data model and the mapping of the data is together with the documents that are passing into the PLM is simple to maintenance, and you can really export from material exchange to some other PLM or other system, you know, on the press of the click.
Great, thank you. And our last question before we move into the live demonstration. Are there international suppliers on your platform?
Yeah, we have suppliers from all over the world. Obviously, by the nature of supply chains in general, a lot of those are in China, but we do have suppliers in many other countries, and we are working to add more and more suppliers internationally. We are launching a new material exchange 2.0 in July, and our goal is to have key suppliers in most geographic locations on the platform by then. We are working very busily, very hard to get those suppliers onboarded, and the current situation is really pushing demand for suppliers to digitize their materials.
Great, thank you. So now we are going to hand it over to Dayan. We're going to, there we go. Give us a few seconds and we will bring up the live demonstration.
I hope everybody can see my screen. Darren, can you confirm that, please?
Yeah.
Yep, I can see.
Okay, thank you. So I know that I mentioned a couple of times PLM, but PLMs are usually looking quite boring. This is not the same thing. And at the same time, I can also link to the last question. So for example, you see a bunch of materials applied or uploaded by the Indian company, actually from India, Zilingo, and I'm just going to go through this. So this is really a live system. A bunch of these materials were actually added since we started the webinar. And just to give a look and feel quickly, how it can help in the digital way also for the designers. You see now that there are a couple of so this material was uploaded in a couple of different images, and for the designers, they can even have a quick 3D view of the material. If the material is styled and prepared and scanned in a proper way, actually this can give a pretty good look and feel for the 3D representation of the material, and can see that very nice. And like Darren said, everybody can download this material, in no time, together with the 3D content, or a request for the physical sample that would allow you, to reduce your storage capacity for the material library inside of your company. And you can also do a direct question to the supplier, where the question goes to the person who is assigned by supplier to give you a proper answer. You don't need to search to whom to answer any question about this by using the material exchange message center, or you can save to your materials. That is very useful for everybody in the industry, because we are actually mimicking the way how the material experts, sourcing experts, and designers are working, with a lot of folders with the samples of the materials. But let me go back to the materials and show you the power of the attributes and this digital representation of the materials. So now you see these are these are the samples of the materials uploaded at the material exchange. But if you want to search something, you need to use some attributes, in order to find the right material. So first, let's go and define what kind of material we want to search. Let's say, we already mentioned this, that we have leather, insole, outsole, hardware, textile, knit, woven, and synthetics. But let's go for the first one and start searching leather. Immediately, we are getting to the catalog of the leather inside of the material exchange. So these are the leather samples, but that's quite not all. Usually, even if you have your books and material samples of watch books, already presented and divided into the material types, but usually the pricing is not inside of these sample books. But now you can go and say, for example, okay, I don't want to see materials which are more expensive than $2.5. So these are leather. You remember we select that at the beginning. Now we're filtering out to the 2.5. And why I can use, or how I can use this data model and attributes? Well, I can turn on something what is very useful, like comparison. So I can pick a couple of materials by clicking in these checkboxes and say, okay, let me see and compare these three materials, because I like them. They are something what I'm considering, but let's see other properties. And now with this comparison, I can see all these attributes that any of these materials have, and then compare like for like. So I can see, for example, the color family of those of these materials, or lead time of production. So if it is critical for me, like that it needs to be in 30 days, I can pick this material instead of other two. Or thickness, or any of the attributes or properties, which are significant for me, or which I can use for making decision in a production or design. Should I put it in a collection? Should I shortlist it, or should I simply discard them completely? So let me go back to the. Sorry, I have this thing to move in order to close. Okay, let me go back to the search. I can go even deeper into this because we have plenty of these attributes set searchable. So let's go for some obscure one. You see these are the list of attributes that we can find, and let's go here for, I don't know, surface shine. Dual mate. And now I'm going to filter out all the materials which are fitting to this criteria. If that is not enough, I can go for hand fill and select one. Let me say oily. And you will see that in no time it's filtered out. And I, for example, like this blue one. So I can go inside and I can see really a lot of information which were not available for me in any of the sample books or material books. Starting for the general info about supplier, not to mention that if I click here, I can go to the profile of the supplier and see more about the supplier in their digital profile. I see about, I can see the contacts, I can even check with them if they put a WeChat or phone number, I can connect with them. And if I'm interested in, for example, sustainability, I can see that, oh, they have leather working group gold. And then I can click on this and really see, oh, actually it's silver. I can see the certificate, and I can see that date of audit is 2080, expired date is 1st June 2020. So the certificate is still on. So it helps you really in a situation when you have your compliance standards and sustainability standards, defined, and if you require silver, then you don't need to source a material which does not have a certificate. Now let's move on also for this data model. So you see that material description, of course, and then you have these general attributes, then physical sample book information. So you can even, if you do have the physical sample book in front of you, you can find that material easy in reference of that sample book. Then you can see more information like lead time production, color family, then color information, then thickness, all these attributes which are usually not available for you. We are working very hard with our suppliers, to explain them the importance of these attributes, because they are not important just because the brands need to ask that. They are important to be presented before brands need to ask that, in order to give them a better clarity and visibility of the materials. So after I do this, I can save to my materials, and then I will be presented with that which I mentioned before. It's a list of folders. So I can say, okay, let me put in, I don't know, ideal leather folder, or I can add new. But for this collection, I'm doing this in add idea and clicking on submit. And after answering of this question, am I sure, it's gonna be, I'm gonna be informed that it's saved into the My Materials, and I can go in that My Materials and see the structure of the folders. So you remember we call this ideal leather, and we just add one into this folder, which is this one. What can I do with this? I can put a comment on this. I can also share this folder with I can share this folder with my team members. So what does it mean? I can share that with the people or with organizational units. So material exchange is really not just a catalog of the materials, it also helps you to organize your team. So for this test account, which I'm doing using for the demo, there are these 5 users, so I can share that individually, or I can decide to share that with a group of users. So maybe for the development and design, or for, I don't know, footwear division for women, if these are the materials that are interested for that specific group. I can easily define these materials, this organizational structure inside of this admin panel, where I can easily add users. I can define my team, and I can really do with the even very complex structure, organizational structure, where I can assign the team members inside of any team, give them a different roles, admin, manager, user, light user. And also in these groups, I can approve or disapprove some of the books coming from the suppliers. So for example, in this top level group, I can see that some suppliers have been has been approved, like these 5, and I can really do the real work, just in the digital way. I don't need to take consideration that my design team does not have that material book in their library, so I need to send them and post them by the door-to-door service. I don't need to think about how I'm gonna leave it on one desk and then the other desk will not have access to those materials, because I can easily share with my team. And everybody in the team can work with this, in a different way. I just want to add one more thing. In our dashboard, we have a connection to our other parts of our ecosystem. For example, our marketing website, where we do sharing information from all around the industry. So these are new section on our marketing website. But just recently, we launched a community site, which allows suppliers, brands, manufacturers, and all the personas inside of the industry to announce their information from their industry. So it's a kind of forum, business media site where we can publish information about industry news and sustainability, industry news, partners, technology, suppliers announcement, access material stock, which is now getting really, really interesting, brand new footwear, all these things, and we really expect, because there were a lot of questions why the whole industry doesn't have something like this. So we are really trying, to help the industry with the whole ecosystem, not with just a library and a catalog. So I'm gonna pause now and let you for the second round of questions.
Great, thank you. The next question, can you expand a little bit more on the business model of the platform? For example, do retailers and brands pay to be part of the material exchange platform?
So we have 2 license fees. We have one for brands per user, and it's for a single user, it's $1,000 per year. And for suppliers, we charge them between $3,000 and $4,000 per year, but they can work with any number of brands in our system. So it's a one-time fee. So obviously, if you work with 5 or 10 brands per brand, the price goes down considerably. But we do offer some very good incentives. At the moment, we're offering suppliers 3 months access to our system for free during this difficult time. And until July, we are offering brands free access as well. And actually, we typically offer brands 6 months in the system, so they get a feel of it and they understand how it works. And we start working with their suppliers, and we try and make it as easy for them as possible. Obviously, we already have a lot of suppliers, so their suppliers would already be there. Then they would just start reviewing materials from those suppliers or requesting to see specific materials that are exclusive to them. But we think that our pricing is fair for the market, and we've had very good feedback on that.
Great, thank you. And the next question, how can your system assure the color of the material between the image taken and the real color of the same material?
This question has two parts. First one is how good are the scans and the image representations. So we do have a special scanning guide and training for our suppliers in order to learn how they can do the accuracy in the coloring. And also we are going to introduce the ability to link with and also to recognize the Pantone scale and to adjust that information after the scanning. We are preparing plenty of new features at the beginning of Q3, end of Q2, beginning of Q3, where these color features will be also, very interesting for you. And ability to recognize the colors from the scan and also to adjust them on a proper way. The second way is how the 3D scans could be color adjusted. Depends upon a 3D scan. We are partnering with the different scanning hubs who are dealing with right and accurate representations of the colors, and also putting the right data into metadata and attribute set for the materials.
Great, thank you. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask if either of you had any final recommendations for brands and retailers as they adjust to the impacts of COVID-19.
Yeah, we recommend digitalization. We've been recommending that for some time, and I don't think it's as daunting as some think. I think that one of the things that confuses the market is that digitalization is often seen as full 3D, and obviously we've shown here that there could be a lot of material data that goes beyond 3D for sourcing purposes, and with a very good quality 2D scanner, you can actually get a very good representation of the material, so you don't even need to have your suppliers spend a lot of money in paying for 3D scans. So my recommendation is start digitizing your supply chain, start working with a few suppliers, getting the data flowing back and forth, and take advantage of our free access period, which we'll be shutting up after July of this year. So I recommend to act soon.
Great, thank you. So on that note, we are going to conclude today's webinar. Thank you again, Darren and Dayan, for presenting today. As a quick reminder, all attendees will receive a follow-up email containing the slide deck and a recording from today's program. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any additional questions. You can always contact USFIA directly by emailing us at info@usfashionindustry.com. So again, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to hosting you at the next USFIA event.